It started like any other Tuesday. Angela Monroe, a 56-year-old woman with tired feet and kind eyes, was unloading groceries from her car. Her small brick house sat quietly on the corner of a suburban street in Brookdale, a town where most people kept to themselves and nothing major ever happened, until now. She was halfway to the door with a bag of fruit when a pair of squad cars screeched to a stop outside her home. Doors flung open. Officers charged forward, shouting indistinct commands. Angela froze. "Ma'am. Step away from the vehicle." One barked. Angela held up her hands, confused. "This is my home. What is this?" Before she could finish, an officer yanked her wrist. Another slammed her against her car. "You're resisting." One yelled, even as she sobbed, "I'm not." A neighbor recorded it from their window. Another neighbor shouted for the officers to stop. But they didn't. They handcuffed Angela face down on her own lawn, bruising her ribs in the process. No one told her what she'd supposedly done. She was driven away, no explanation, no Miranda rights read. The next day, a video of the incident hit social media and local news. Outrage simmered. But the true storm hadn't arrived yet. Because the officers didn't know who her son was. And he was already en route. Miles away, in Quantico, Virginia, a phone buzzed on a stainless steel desk inside a restricted federal building. The man seated there was reviewing surveillance logs, until he saw the caller ID. "Mom." It wasn't a call, it was a voicemail. He tapped play. Through the static, he heard her voice tremble, "Baby. I don't know what's going on. They grabbed me outside the house. Please." Then a male voice cut in, "Phone down, now." A shuffle. A click. Silence. Agent Marcus Monroe stood up so fast his chair toppled. He wasn't just any son. He wasn't just angry. He was Tier 1, former Special Recon Marine turned elite federal investigator. Tactical clearance. Classified ops. A quiet man, trained to handle the worst of humanity with surgical precision. Within minutes, he rerouted his schedule, filed for immediate emergency leave, and contacted 2 discrete internal channels. The details of his request. Opaque to everyone but 3 directors. Marcus didn't rush. He calculated. He didn't scream. He focused. And he didn't threaten. Because when men like him show up, they don't ask twice. By nightfall, he was on a flight to Brookdale. And he wasn't alone. The moment Marcus landed in Brookdale, he didn't call anyone. He didn't head to the precinct. He didn't even stop at his mother's house. Instead, he drove a rented black SUV to a nearby motel under a false name. Then he opened his black duffel bag, military-grade gear, encrypted laptop, noise-canceling earpiece, and a sleek tablet with full access to internal federal databases. He was calm. He always was, just before things fell apart for someone else. He began pulling footage, traffic cameras, ATMs, doorbells, dash cams. He scanned audio logs from police scanners in the area on the day of the arrest. Timestamp, 3:47 p.m. Suspicious individual at 42 Pineview, female, mid-50s. Matching description. Matching what description? No active warrant. No APB. Nothing. Then he saw it. Officer Blake Hudson, badge number 3167, had filed a fabricated dispatch claim 15 minutes before even arriving on scene. Worse, bodycam footage was conveniently corrupted. Marcus knew what that meant. Internal cover-up in progress. He tapped into a federal access request and cross-checked Hudson's records. 3 prior complaints. All sealed. 2 involving excessive force. 1 mysteriously withdrawn. This wasn't a mistake. It was a pattern. And someone had just made the biggest one of their lives, laying hands on his mother. At 11:06 p.m., Marcus pressed send on a packet of information to a contact at Internal Affairs with a simple message: initiate quiet probe. Begin background on Hudson, Mitchell, and Supervising Officer Griggs. Pull footage from city grid near Pineview. Do not alert local PD, target has personal relevance. Then he stood up, slid a silencer onto his compact Glock, and walked into the night. Because Marcus wasn't done watching. He was just getting started. It was past midnight when Marcus finally approached the house on Pineview Drive. His mother's front lawn still showed signs of the chaos: scuffed grass, broken flower pots, a stray latex glove under the hedges. Her car, dented and smeared, sat crooked in the driveway. A neighbor's porch light flickered across the quiet street. Marcus walked slowly, scanning every angle. He wasn't here just to visit. He was here to reconstruct the scene. He crouched near the driver's side door of her car, flashlight off, eyes focused. There it was, scratches on the metal where handcuffs had scraped during the takedown. A faint dark blotch on the pavement, dried blood. His mother's blood. He clenched his jaw and forced the emotion down. That came later. For now, facts. From a small pouch on his belt, he pulled out a digital UV scanner and swept the scene. Fingerprints lit up, gloved and unloved. The officers had been sloppy. Behind him, a quiet voice whispered from a cracked window next door. "You're her boy, aren't you?" Marcus turned. An elderly woman stood half hidden by her curtains. He nodded once. She pushed the window open a little more. "I saw the whole thing. I told them, those men had no reason." She didn't even raise her voice. They slammed her on the hood like she was a criminal. Marcus stepped closer, keeping his tone even. "Did you get a video?" She nodded and vanished for a moment. When she returned, she slipped a USB drive through the screen. "I made a backup. Just in case, they came back." He took it gently. "You did the right thing, ma'am." Back in his SUV, he plugged in the drive. Within seconds, he watched the entire assault unfold from a side angle: clear audio, clear visuals. There was no resisting. No threat. Just brutality. And in the background of the video, one officer looked directly at the neighbor's window. He saw her. And he didn't care. They thought they were untouchable. Marcus closed the laptop. The evidence was building. Quietly. Legally. But if they didn't respond to the law, he had other ways. By morning, the first pressure point was already applied. Brookdale's Internal Affairs Division received an anonymous encrypted envelope. Inside, the unedited neighbor video official arrest reports with time discrepancies, prior sealed complaints against officers Hudson, Mitchell, and Lieutenant Griggs, a bullet point breakdown of procedural violations, excessive force codes, and missing documentation. The sender untraceable. But the message was clear: someone was watching. Across town, in the Brookdale Police Department, the air grew tight. Griggs, a smug career officer with too many friends and too little oversight, flipped through the printed copies with pale fingers. "Where the hell did this come from?" he barked. Hudson shrugged, avoiding eye contact. "It's probably that neighbor." She had her phone out. Griggs narrowed his eyes. "This isn't just some nosy woman with a TikTok. This has clearance-level access. We're talking redacted records. Internal memos. Bodycam serial logs." Hudson looked up. "You think someone's coming after us?" Griggs didn't answer. He just stared down at the packet and muttered, "We need to contain this. Now." But it was already too late. At that very moment, Marcus sat in a cafe near City Hall, sipping black coffee. On his phone, a secure message lit up: IA review triggered. External oversight notified. Time to escalate. He closed the message and opened a new file: Operation Ledger. Next phase, public awareness. That afternoon, a prominent national journalist received a mysterious tip with attached footage, badge numbers, and eyewitness contacts. The headline wrote itself: Brookdale officers brutalize local woman without cause, civil liberties watchdog launches probe. It went live within the hour. By nightfall, it had 500,000 views. But Marcus still wasn't done. Because none of this would matter, unless he reached the source of it all. Griggs. And Marcus had just found out where he'd be tomorrow night. The Brookdale Policemen's Association fundraiser was held at a luxury golf resort just outside town. Quiet. Exclusive. The kind of place where uniforms were traded for polo shirts and silence was bought with donations. Lieutenant Griggs was scheduled to speak at 8:30 p.m. By 8 o'clock, Marcus had already slipped inside under the name David Collins, wearing a tailored gray suit, no tie, and a calm expression that betrayed nothing. He stood by the bar, watching Griggs hold court near the back table, laughing too loudly, acting untouched by the storm brewing outside. The irony. Marcus waited until Griggs walked to the lobby alone, tapping on his phone. Then he approached, slow, steady, calculated. "Lieutenant Griggs," he said flatly. Griggs looked up, confused. "Do I know you?" Marcus held his gaze. "You should." Griggs squinted. "You a reporter?" "No, a lawyer." Marcus stepped closer. "I'm her son." Griggs froze. His eyes twitched. Marcus leaned in, his voice like ice behind velvet. "You laid hands on the wrong woman." Griggs chuckled nervously, backing up half a step. "Look, if this is about the arrest, there's a process for complaints. You're welcome to file something through the department." "Oh, I'm not filing anything," Marcus said. "I'm building something. And it's already moving. Quiet probes. Federal oversight. Ethics committees. You just don't know how far it's spread yet." Griggs's bravado cracked. "Are you threatening me?" "No," Marcus said. "I'm warning you. You still have a chance to come clean. Resign. Cooperate. Or keep pretending you're protected, and wait for everything you built to collapse." Before Griggs could answer, Marcus turned and walked away, disappearing into the crowd like mist. Outside, he exhaled slowly and tapped his phone. Phase 2 complete. Now it was time to go see his mother. Because the next battle wouldn't be in secret. It would be public. The next morning, Brookdale woke up to a storm it couldn't ignore. 3 major news outlets picked up the story overnight. A 4th leaked internal email suggesting that Officer Hudson had tampered with evidence in 2 past cases, and that Lieutenant Griggs had authorized the deletion of bodycam footage on more than one occasion. By 9:15 a.m., the mayor had issued a lukewarm statement about reviewing departmental policies. By 10:40, civil rights attorneys were already circling the case. And by noon, protesters lined the steps of City Hall, holding signs not just with Angela Monroe's name, but with her face. Meanwhile, inside Brookdale General Hospital, Angela sat upright in bed, bruised but alert. She looked older somehow, weathered not by years, but by betrayal. She hadn't known the cameras caught it all. She hadn't known how far her son had already gone. Until he walked into the room. Marcus stepped inside quietly. No badge. No files. No agenda. Just her son. Angela looked at him for a long moment before whispering, "Baby, what did you do?" He sat beside her, gently taking her hand. "I'm making sure this never happens to you, or anyone else, again." Tears welled in her eyes. "They treated me like I didn't matter." "You matter more than they'll ever understand," he said. Outside, his phone buzzed again. An update from one of his silent allies inside the DOJ, "You've rattled the right cages. Subpoenas are coming. Griggs just retained legal counsel." Marcus didn't smile. He didn't celebrate. Because this wasn't over. Now the wolves were turning on each other. And the next step would force the entire department into the light. 2 days later, the walls began to crumble. Officer Mitchell, third on the scene during Angela's arrest, flipped. Under pressure from internal affairs and facing his own misconduct allegations, he agreed to cooperate in exchange for immunity. What he revealed confirmed Marcus's worst suspicions. The call that initiated the arrest wasn't from dispatch, it came from within the department. Angela was profiled after a mistaken identity tip from a private source, later redacted. Griggs ordered the officers to contain the situation and keep it off the record. But most damning of all, Mitchell admitted the department had used unofficial, quiet codes in internal comms to flag certain individuals for surveillance or escalation, and Angela's name had been added manually. The press ate it up. Brookdale PD implodes, internal whistleblower exposes shadow operation, mayor demands emergency hearing amid allegations of target lists, exclusive, son of assault victim linked to federal investigation team. Griggs tried to deny everything. But his statements didn't match the timeline. His lawyers scrambled. Hudson disappeared for a day, then was found trying to wipe a personal laptop. It was unraveling fast. Inside his temporary apartment, Marcus reviewed the files again, confirming what he needed. He didn't want revenge. He wanted accountability. Public. Legal. Permanent. That night, he delivered one final packet to the U.S. Attorney's Office. Included, encrypted witness testimony, chain of command email trails, metadata, timestamps from redacted files and video evidence, timestamp synced, verified, and watermarked. It was no longer just about a local case. Now it was federal. And soon, the people who laughed at Angela Monroe's pain would be facing charges under oath. 3 weeks later, the Brookdale City Council chambers were packed wall to wall. Reporters. Legal observers. Residents. Activists. All waiting for one thing, the emergency public hearing. At the center of it all sat Lieutenant Griggs, pale, defiant, but visibly sweating, as a special investigator read aloud the findings of the joint federal probe. Lieutenant Griggs knowingly suppressed bodycam footage, authorized unconstitutional arrests, and maintained an off-record profiling system in direct violation of state and federal law. Gasps rippled through the room. Griggs's attorney tried to object, but the chairwoman cut him off. "You'll have your chance. Sit down." Behind the scenes, Marcus watched from a private observation room above the chamber, out of view, as always. Angela sat beside him, dressed in soft gray, her hands folded tightly. She didn't say a word. She didn't need to. Because the truth was finally being spoken, not in back rooms, not in whispers, but into microphones and live streams, broadcast across the state. Then came the moment no one expected. The chairwoman paused, looked directly at Griggs, and announced, "Based on the presented evidence, we are referring this case to the State Attorney General for criminal prosecution. Effective immediately, Lieutenant Griggs is relieved of duty, pending charges." Cameras flashed. Griggs stood up and snapped, "You think you can bury me?" But this time, no one backed down. And as security escorted him from the room, the crowd didn't clap. They didn't cheer. They just watched. Because justice wasn't a performance. It was finally, methodically, being done. Marcus leaned closer to his mother and whispered, "We're not finished. But this is the turn." Angela turned to him with eyes full of quiet fire. "And I'll be here for the rest." 3 months later, the courtroom was silent as the verdict came down. "We, the jury, find the defendant, Lieutenant Daniel Griggs, guilty on all counts." Griggs didn't flinch. He stared ahead, hollow, like a man who still didn't believe the world had changed around him. But outside, the world had changed. Officer Hudson had pled guilty weeks earlier and accepted a reduced sentence in exchange for full cooperation. Mitchell had been placed in protective custody after testifying before a federal oversight panel. The entire Brookdale PD was undergoing a historic restructuring under a temporary federal monitor. But none of that mattered to Angela Monroe as much as this one moment. She stood outside the courthouse in the early fall breeze, surrounded by cameras she didn't want. She didn't smile. She didn't celebrate. She simply said, "I'm not here because I wanted revenge. I'm here because the truth deserved daylight." Marcus stood beside her, not as an agent, not as a weapon. As her son. The Department of Justice had quietly extended him a commendation, one he politely declined. "No medals," he told them. "Just fix the system." He returned to work weeks later. Quietly. Without fanfare. That's how he preferred it. But Brookdale would never forget the man who moved like a shadow, and the mother whose voice sparked a fire. Their story became a case study in justice departments and law schools. The footage, archived. The outcome, cited in national reform discussions. And while Marcus never spoke to the media, one quote eventually leaked from a closed-door seminar he gave to a group of federal trainees: "They thought she was alone. They forgot who raised me."